I've never been the biggest fan of the boost formula style of Sonic games. I mean, as somebody who grew up with a Dreamcast, it makes sense that I'm an absolute nut for the old adventure style of gameplay. But I will admit that this has grown on me over the years. I tolerated it in Sonic Generations and enjoyed that game despite my distaste for the general core gameplay, and while Frontiers is a little bit of an incoherent mess at times, it is at least an interesting mess, which is something I'll always be happy to see. And I think they've really hit their stride with Shadow Generations, with the changes that they've made to that game making it one of my favourite games in the series, though I'm probably a little bit biased. But Sonic Unleashed was always a game that I kinda went out of my way to avoid. It was patient zero of the boost formula and its 2.5D gameplay, and while I've always had the intention of going back to play it one day, be it via a borrowed Xbox Series X or by the very, very cool Unleashed project, it's just something I've never been in a particularly big rush to get to. Enter the Recompilation project earlier this year, and suddenly I have the perfect excuse to give this game a shot now. Like the Unleashed project, it's just a really cool little thing that fans have been able to produce. But unlike the Unleashed project, I've actually got a PC that can run it while it's new, novel, and in the zeitgeist. So I figured, hey, I've been in a pretty big Sonic mood since the Sonic Dream Team video, and who knows, maybe I could even do a video on it. After all, it's a really good PC port that's got all the bells and whistles you'd expect from it, and mods galore from day one, thanks to the Sonic fandom all being a pile of freaks, and I love them. So now that I've played it, and I've finally had the chance to see what all the hubbub is about, since I know that fans swear by this game, I'm pleasantly surprised to say that yeah, it's pretty good. I definitely ended up enjoying it more than I was expecting to, but just not as much as I'd hoped, because, I mean, at the end of the day, I do like liking things. I'm not a boost hater because I want to be. Now, you might be wondering, but Kraft, the title says that you think this game is beautiful and you loved it, and now you're saying that you only kind of enjoyed it? Well, my friend, that's because while we are going to be talking about Sonic Unleashed today, it's not the Hedgehog engine version for the Xbox 360 and PS Triple that we're going to be talking about. It's the often forgotten Wii port / demake, also known as Sonic Unwiished. It's a lot less common these days as we're kind of plateauing a little bit in technology when it comes to game tech, so a lot of the time when a game does get ported, it gets ported. Maybe it looks and runs like ass, and maybe has a few missing features here and there, but hey, it's portable. But more importantly, it is the core game that is still intact. But back in the day, you'd often get games released on a wide range of platforms that definitely couldn't run what was being shown in the ads. Oh boy, I can't wait to play Star Wars The Force Unleashed on my Nintendo Wii. It looks so good and... okay. Well, I mean, this wasn't what I was expecting, but it's still pretty neat, and the extra boss fights and multiplayer mode in this version are actually pretty sick. I'm pretty happy with... Wait a minute, what the hell does the DS version look like? Oh dear god. Now, this was a practice that was more popular for the licensed tie-in games more than anything, something for a movie or whatever, and was usually trying to take advantage of the uninformed buyer trying to get something for their kid, hoping that on brand recognition alone they'd sell the game without the customer doing any sort of research, because honestly it worked more often than not. But this wasn't always the case, and sometimes you would genuinely find some real diamonds in the rough. And occasionally this would happen with non-licensed titles too. It was generally just something that you needed to keep a close ear to the ground on, but the safe bet for these types of games was pretty much always that you just wanted to get the version of the game that was available on the latest and greatest console generation, as all the other versions were typically afterthoughts shat out just to maximize sales, and everybody knew it, be it consciously or otherwise. I mean, nobody's talking about the DS version of Assassin's Creed 2 after all. There are, however, a good number of these games that actually do stand toe-to-toe with their more impressive and popular golden siblings that, if you do a little bit of digging on the internet, you'll find people swearing by, saying that they're better or at the very least just as good, but ultimately a different experience to the quote-unquote main version. I feel like sometimes you can just chalk this up to what the person grew up with and the nostalgia clouding their point of view, but there are instances where you can make an argument here, like Prince of Persia: The Forgotten Sands on Wii being this charming puzzle platformer instead of a kind of mid hack and slash, or King Kong on the PS2 looking infinitely better than the next gen version despite its lower fidelity assets. Granted, those versions do have pretty good gameplay parity, it's just the visual style that is different. Noodle has a really great video talking about it if you're interested. Sega, around this post-Sonic 06 era, started using this business model to a small degree as well, albeit with a lot more restraint than most devs, limiting themselves to only doing 2 versions of a game, and for the most part, what they do is have a main console game and pair it with a handheld equivalent. Sonic Colors on DS was this sort of third pseudo-Sonic Rush game, and Sonic Generations, Lost World, and Boom all had very different versions on 3DS as well. Sonic Unleashed, however, had a version that was only available on Nintendo Wii and PlayStation 2, and I'm assuming probably like many of you, I disregarded this version for years. I think I might have watched a Some Call Me Johnny video on it way back when, but other than that, I never really gave it the time of day. But thanks to the Unleashed recompilation project, enough of my interest was piqued that I had a little quick look at a couple of videos and a AGDQ speedrun, and I decided that I needed to give this game a proper look. The key thing that sets Sonic Unwiished apart is how different its boost feels and operates compared to its HD counterpart. The boost isn't a meter that you drain over time to go at blistering speeds, but instead acts as a sort of portable dash pad that you can activate at will. You have these individual pips of boost meter, and each one of these pips grants you a single booster speed that lasts for a few seconds. You have to be careful though, as this mechanic on Unleashed is incredibly unruly, and boosting and hitting a wall even at an angle will, more often than not, make you splat right into it. You are able to cancel the boost by holding back on the analog stick, but this doesn't feel super intuitive to do so, not to mention the fact that if you do this, it's an inefficient use of your boost pips, so it means that tactful use of your boosts is significantly more important. Meter management in general is a essential part to completing these levels in a quick and effective manner. You'll only start off with a maximum of 3 pips of boost, but you'll gain an extra as well as a full refill to the boost gauge at 30, 60 and 90 rings respectively. So you're actually able to go pretty ham with how often you use the boost even in the beginning of a level, as you get these full refills that only stop once you get the maximum of 6 pips. And it's at this point that you'll need to make sure that you keep constantly picking up rings and performing combo chains to maintain a healthy flow of boosts at any given moment. Although you could always just purposely let yourself get hit so you can drop below 90 rings and then get another full refill, but this doesn't exactly feel good, and it's not usually very good in the long run either. Combo chains are started after defeating 2 enemies within quick succession, and can be extended by either defeating more enemies or hitting various interactables like springs, grind rails and boost pads, etc. This will also reward you with extra boost gauge, and the amount that you get will be based on how long you kept the chain going. Interestingly, there's actually a bit of a delay to when it actually fills up, so you've got a little bit of time to try and empty the boost gauge as much as possible so you don't waste your gains. Other than that, pretty much everything you might expect based off of the HD version is here. The game's got drifting, QTE air tricks, and various stage gimmicks you'll be familiar with, just with a bit of very obviously different level design, and a fair bit of cut content. That being said, the general feel to the game is similar, but very different to the HD version, and it's what separates it for me and really makes it stand out in my opinion. See, Unleashed has a much stricter and tighter design to the 360 version. Not necessarily tighter as in more polished or better per se, but in a sense that many of the sections have a right way of going through them, and executing those perfectly is how you'll succeed. The best way to convey this without just making yourself play it is by using the differing boost types and the effect that they have on the gameplay. In the 360 version, you're pretty much boosting all the time. Any moment you have where you can be boosting, you'll want to be doing it. And a lot of what separates the pros from the noobs is learning when not to boost. Sure, things like drifting allow you to turn tight corners while speeding along, but if you are boosting, you have a lot of drag that you have to take into account, and sometimes it's easier and even faster to just take your thumb off that boost button just to make that turn. Even if you can do a turn while boosting, chances are you can do it a lot tighter if you do refrain yourself just for a split second to make it. The thing is, depending on the type of player you are, this can feel really bad, especially if you're someone like me, who might as well have the accelerate button taped down in racing games, as I only use e-brake turns, and this can pose a bit of a problem. Now, it's not that this is necessarily a skill issue, because it's not like I don't know when to let go of the boost, at least to some degree, but it's more that I just don't want to. It feels really bad to me. I didn't spend absolutely no money downloading an ISO of this game to not push buttons. If you are the type of player who does enjoy this system, then more power to you, but to me, I just don't like it. Luckily for Unwiished, however, it flips it on its head, and it's something a little bit more natural to my mindset, where it's about when you press the button and not when you don't. Boosting always sends Sonic directly to the center of the screen and not in the direction that he's pointing, which means that while it can feel a little bit clunky at first with a distinct lack of direct camera control, it does also mean that you're never blindly boosting somewhere that you can't see. It also means that you have a guaranteed way of instantly shifting your trajectory when drifting around a corner. And this is what makes Unwiished just a little bit more strict in its design. Things like dash pads and the like will put you on a sort of semi-automated path, but being able to actually hit them at high speeds is quite tricky. And doing so correctly allows you to make turns that you'd never otherwise be able to make. The difference between perfectly executed, slow and steady, and complete failure are very, very stark. Whilst in the HD version, there's a much more gradual transition between these three states. And typically, barring a few exceptions, even bad gameplay of the HD version will look like you're still running through levels relatively fast. And while they both have their place, I just personally prefer the former. I just find that the visual feedback of how well you're doing in a level is a bit more obvious and satisfying. When you take a turn and you do it perfectly, the game makes you feel that. And I really like this unique variant of the boost gameplay, as we've never seen it again, and I think it's really good for casual speedrunning. It's one of the better Sonic games for conveying to the player when and where they fucked up, and as such really encourages you to go back and keep improving. Even if you're not perfectly routing your way through every level, knowing that you hit every single section perfectly, at least to some degree, is really, really fun. And in my opinion, replaying levels to get the execution down perfectly is what makes Sonic games what they are. After all, even the most casual of players will likely want to really knuckle down and try and beat those old times to get the best run that they can do. Now, unfortunately, as far as a complete package is concerned, the rest of the game is not particularly amazing. In fact, most of it's pretty bad. The Werehog levels are even worse than the PS360 version, which, being the action game snob that I am, I didn't really like in the first place. I don't even really want to take much time getting into detail with this stuff, because quite frankly, it's unimportant as to why I think this version of the game is even worth mentioning. I only really put my hands on it for a couple of minutes to get the general feel, and that was more than enough. The only real part of the game that I think is worth playing these days are those daytime stages, which luckily can be very easily skipped to just by downloading a complete save, because let's face it, if you're playing this game in 2025, you're probably doing so in an emulator, and you might as well cut out all the fat while you can. It's not like you'll be playing this version for its story either, it's pretty much entirely told through these phone game-ass visual novel scenes, with all of the important stuff being presented as pre-rendered videos. Surprisingly good quality pre-rendered videos, to be fair, but still not great. They're fairly free from compression artifacts, but this is still a 480p console, so there's only so much you can do. Either way, by emulating, you can not only skip to all of the best parts, but you can remap the controls, play in HD, have a surprisingly decent texture pack, and play as Sonic, my favourite OC. You can also patch the game to play it at 60 FPS, which only significantly breaks 2 of the stages and multiple boss fights. Though honestly, it's probably a little bit more fun when you can stunlock Eggman with some well-timed boosts. Now, this means what we get that's actually worth playing isn't really much at all. We just get 7, technically 8 levels to play through, which is nothing, especially when you consider how short Sonic levels can be. But in all fairness, Sonic Adventure 1 only has 10 Sonic levels, and depending on who you ask, they're the only ones worth playing. And granted, those people are wrong, but it is thanks to the replayable nature of the arcadey Sonic gameplay that allows those levels to go a long way. And since we are emulating it here, it's not like it's going to put a dent in your wallet. The big, mildly depressing problem with Sonic Unwiished though is the fact that it's very clearly unfinished and was rushed out the door to coincide with the launch of the bigger main version of the game, and you can tell, with the two obvious omissions being the lack of levels for Skyscraper Scamper and Savannah Citadel. Missouri is in the game, but it's just for its boss fight. And Empire City does kinda make sense since it's not super essential to the story, but between the two of them, it definitely feels super obvious that something was cut. The thing is though, if you do a little bit of digging, you can find very easily it's not the only missing content. There's actually quite a bit hidden within the game's files, a lot of which was chopped up and made playable in some form or another, but not in a way that you'd necessarily want. Windmill Isle actually has 2 daytime acts. It's the only locale in the game that does, and this can be very easily explained with the fact that Act 1 is very clearly meant to be some sort of a tutorial level, and this makes sense, the game's older HD sibling does the same. But for the rest of the game as sort of filler content, you have various challenge levels, very similar to the ones that you find in Sonic X Shadow Generations. They reuse level layouts and have you run through with new enemies and obstacles added into the existing design, and ask you to complete some sort of specific task like collect rings or beat the level without getting hit, etc. Only in Sonic Unwiished, there are a good deal of these challenge levels that use entirely new sections of level, and if you look at the surrounding environments, many of them are very obviously connected to each other, even if they exist within different challenge levels. This may all just be conjecture on my part, but I do very much feel that as good as this version of Sonic Unwiished is, it's very likely that it's only half of what the game should have been. Arid Sands is the only zone in the entire game that has its supposed Act 2 playable from start to finish via one of its time attack missions. It's a little gimmicky overall, but I still had some fun playing it, and while it's not the most amazing stage in the world, it does still represent and give us a peek of what could have been for all the other stages in the game. Dragon Road is the only other zone in the game that has the entirety of its Act 2 in the game, albeit just chopped up and playable across multiple different missions. And this one has a ton of set pieces and sections that really makes it stand out, and if you look close enough you can see multiple areas of this stage where it's very clearly unfinished, as there's areas that are blocked off that clearly look like an alternate path, and sections to the level that seem oddly narrow or lopsided where it's very clear that another section should have joined up, converging those two alternate routes. You could also argue that if you stitched all of them together, it maybe ends a little bit early too, so maybe there is genuinely a bit of a level that is missing. It's all just a really big shame in my opinion, since it's this half of the game that was left on the cutting room floor and not the other half of the game. Rooftop Run's Act 2 is so cut down that it actually exists as a sort of alternate ending to Act 1, where Sonic instead runs through the aqueducts to the city. And then there's a sort of Act 3 within the game's files, which is a sewer-like level that looks like it could have taken place after this aqueduct section. And this looks really cool, and all I can think of is imagine what it would look like if we didn't just cut out the fat with our save file and we lived on a alternate timeline where this game got fleshed out in a very, very different way. What if the devs put more time into the stuff that actually aged pretty well and we weren't left with a incomplete, slightly janky but ultimately charming game? Now, I know game dev doesn't exactly work like this, but I would happily go back in time and sacrifice the man hours that were used to create the PS2 port and the HD version's DLCs and maybe even the Werehog levels for the Wii version if it meant we could get a version of this game where it fully realised its potential. Anyway, my ultimate point is that this is an excellent Sonic game that's never really gotten the justice or anywhere near the recognition that it deserves, and that's a bloody shame. It has a very interesting and unique feeling take on the Boost series, and I feel like if it came out as a free level fan demo or something, you'd definitely get someone like Kotaku or Polygon putting out really distasteful articles being like, this fan game makes Sega look like incompetent fools or something. And I'm not gonna sit here and decree that this is the superior gameplay style for the Boost formula or anything, but I do know that I, on a personal level, did end up enjoying my time with it a lot more than I did the HD version. It's a fun and unique experience that's very easy to set up and run for free on pretty much any laptop, since Dolphin is a really good emulator that's very easy to set up providing you're not using fucking RetroArch. Seriously, stop using RetroArch if you are. It's the most useless and needlessly complicated front end that you could ever use, and its only use that I've ever found is applying shaders like CRT Royale to less modern emulators, but if if you're doing stuff like that, you already know what you're doing. Either way, I hope that I've convinced you at the very least to give this game a chance, because I think it's definitely worth it, and now that the recompilation exists, it's the more attractive twin that is soaking up even more of the attention that it already was, and I feel like I had to give Unwiished a bit of a signal boost, because otherwise it's very easily going to get forgotten. But yeah, that's my final conclusion. It's a good game, go play it. Howdy gamers, how you doing? Now, I know I had that poll in the community tab the other week, and I said that I was going to be focusing on a DMC1 video, and it is still coming, it's just that the video's scope has inflated once again. Bright side, I really like how it's turning out, and hopefully you'll all enjoy it as much as I am enjoying making it. But since it's going to take a little bit longer, and I kind of had the impulse to make this video, I just went ahead and did it. But now I am fully committing to both the DMC1 and the Castlevania Legacy of Darkness videos. I do have some others in the works as well, but I'm not going to allow myself to touch them until I've finished these two. I really don't like that I'm taking this long on them, both for my own sanity, but also because I don't like stringing you all along, but hopefully it will be worth it. Until then, all of you just keep staying cool and or sexy.